everyone, welcome to the Otherz podcast. I am your host, Stephen Penny. As usual, been away for a while, far too long, but back again. Back with a new guest this time. I think previous episodes it's been recurring guests, but a new guest. Currently residing in the country close to my heart, so that I was going to say very much miss. Don't miss all that much, but kind of miss a little bit. Jerome Arab, how you doing, man?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. We were just chatting before we started recording about our complaints about our respective weathers. Jerome telling me, originally from Africa, so obviously the UK weather is a little bit different to what he's used to. And then I'm sat here and it's minus 15 and there's about a foot of snow outside again, just when we thought we were getting into spring.
Yeah, I'm not coming to Finland anytime soon.
No, I was going to say, anyone's always welcome out here, but yeah, it's nice to visit, not always quite so nice to stay any longer in. And if any Finnish people are listening, I'm saying that sarcastically and facetiously. It's a lovely place. I have no complaints.
It sounds beautiful. I mean, I love the snow.
It's, like I say, it takes a bit getting used to, but it's all right. Right, so let's crack on with our track for this week. And we have got, just looking at my notes, and my autocorrect has corrected it incorrectly for me, and it's Finns Get Loose, which would be apt for me being here, but there ain't that many Finnish people getting loose, I don't think. Not that kind of country. But we are talking about Finna Get Loose.
Yep.
Obviously, at this point, he was yet again Puff Daddy and the Family, featuring Pharrell, produced by Pharrell, with the shouting and annoyance and direction of Puff Daddy or Diddy or whatever he wants to go by nowadays. What do we call him now? Do you know?
I'm sure.
Diddy
I think it's Diddy. Yeah, it's Diddy again.
I can never really keep up. Let's go for Diddy for now then. So we'll get the facts out of the way first.
Yep.
So this was from, as I say, Puff Daddy and the Family's No Way Out 2 album from 2015. Different sources say different things. Somewhere told me this was the first release from the album. Somewhere else said it was the third release from the album. So I've got no idea. Yeah. But released on the 28th of June 2015. Didn't really do much in terms of charting. It got to 15 on the US bubbling under Hot 100 singles and one of these random charts. And then 44 on the US Hot R&B/Hip Hop Songs Billboard chart. In its first week, did 26,000 downloads and just under 500,000 streams. Not too bad. The video came out a couple of months later, on the 31st of August, directed by the legendary Hype Williams, and currently has approximately 4.5 million YouTube views. Now, we were going to discuss another song tonight, which one was it?
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe, that's the one. And you said to me, very underrated song. And I said, yes, it is. So underrated, in fact, that I'd completely forgotten I'd recorded an episode about that track already. So we had to go back to the list, check what was available. And I was quite glad you picked this one because it's been sat on the list for quite a while. But like Marilyn Monroe, I think it's another kind of quite underrated track.
Yeah.
I think for probably slightly different reasons. But yeah, this is one of those ones that I do actually really enjoy listening to, really enjoy the video. It's not a classic Hype Williams video, but it's kind of that time. There are certain stylistic effects that remind me of All of the Lights that he did with Kanye.
Kanye, yeah.
Probably a little bit before, maybe a year before that or around the same time roughly. Yeah. So the track in itself I actually really enjoy. I won't say it's a brilliantly written or produced track. It's not going to be one of your top 10 ones, but it is one of those tracks that's got really good energy, and the sort of track that if it comes on in a club or a bar,
it goes down.
It goes down. I'm too old to go to those places nowadays, so I've just got to imagine that in my head. but I'm pretty sure I've heard it in a bar and or club at some point in the past. And it's that kind of, real up-tempo, bouncy, slightly aggressive kind of track that would work really well in that kind of situation. So what's your take on the track? What were your kind of initial thoughts and feelings about it?
Firstly, when I first heard the track, I was actually watching MTV, and I was like, oh, okay. I thought the track was going to do a lot better than it did do. I thought it was going to be one of the chart-topping tracks, and because there was a bit of a push and a buzz behind it, they got to perform it at a few award shows. Chris Brown was dancing to it, and it just seemed like, oh, this is going to be another chapter, But obviously, it didn't do the numbers that we expected and stuff. I think as a track, as you say, I love it. I think it's a solid joint. Like it does what it needs to do. In terms of with relation to the culture as well, it felt like it was a lot of 90s samples. So it was sampled from a sampled track, if that makes sense. That's what I was reading, and I was like, when I heard that the first sounds, it brought back the New Kids on the Block.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that the track.
I know one. Yeah. The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
Was it called The Right Stuff or something like that?
Something like that. I think so.
Show my age now. Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, that sounds like a New Kids on the Block kind of thing, and that's what drew me to the track, is that association and the James Brown association as well. Like the way they performed the record is so James Brown,
Yeah.
It's almost like the yelling and stuff is definitely, you could see directly like, so I looked into the samples straight away, especially when I knew this conversation was going to come up, and I was like, I don't know, I'm going to share. So samples from Terradome. I don't know if you remember the track Terradome Empire or something like that but there were samples in that from The Temptations, Jeffrey Sumner, T.S. Monk, James Brown, and two Temptation songs, Cloud9 and Psychedelic Shack. So there's like a bunch of samples in the track that they sampled. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. It just made sense. It was like it's hip hop. That's what this track is,
Yeah, and it's got those when I listen, I haven't heard it in a while, so I watched it back earlier on. And obviously it's got the interpolation of, Welcome to the Terradome by Public Enemy in it.
Yes.
And obviously Public Enemy are referenced as well.
Yeah.
And again, the way the kind of vocals are set up and the way they're delivered, to me, that's kind of quite Public Enemy-esque as well. Like you say, kind of quite 90s. It's got that kind of quite short to the point, aggressive kind of flow to parts of it as well. So it gave me that kind of that vibe as well.
Yeah.
New Kids on the Block didn't come to my mind. Public Enemy did though.
That chanting, man, when you play it back, just listen to that chanting like that they got going. Yeah. I was like, oh, that is so familiar. And then it made sense.
But and I know what you mean, it does kind of resemble that, and I'm not going to try and do that. The word I'm looking at, vocal kind of thing, harmonization or whatever it is that's used, because I can't, my voice doesn't go like that. But it's a sound that, Pharrell is used in quite a lot of tracks. I can think of a couple of Rick Ross ones I think it's used in. And there's a few others dotted around where he uses that same kind of sound. That kind of background sort of chanting that, repeats over and over again. And it works really, really well in this track, definitely. One thing I kind of remembered this afternoon as I was watching it back was there's also a kind of, a making of or behind the scenes video as well. Have you seen that at all?
No, I'll actually go and check that out now. Yeah, tell me a bit more about it.
So it's only, I think, 3 or 4 minutes long. And it's Pharrell, Diddy in the studio, Diddy talking about kind of what he wants, from the track. And what they're starting with, the beat that Pharrell has to start with, almost, it just does not resemble this track whatsoever. It doesn't resemble the finished product whatsoever. And obviously, it's early days. It's in its very, basic form. They're putting sounds together, trying to work out the direction they want it to go in. But you wouldn't, if you listen to one, you listen to the other, you wouldn't necessarily think they were kind of linked. They're that kind of different. And what I kind of really like and what really interests me is obviously you hear all these stories over the years about, how Diddy can be a challenge to work with. He's quite demanding, let's say. I don't think he gets much sleep. And you get that vibe from him in the video of him kind of directing Pharrell, what he wants to do, what he wants it to sound like. And it goes on for a little while, and it's like you can tell they're not really getting what they want from it.
Yeah.
It cuts to a black screen, and it's like day 49, and it cuts back to Pharrell in the same studio with Diddy still there. And now obviously the track has evolved a bit more, and it sounds a lot more like the finished product. And you see Diddy get very, very excited about it, and kind of ranting and raving in that kind of style that he has when he's a bit excited. And then you see them start to work on some of the vocals and piece that together as well. But again, it's just an interesting video to kind of see how a track can go from something so different to just something at the other end of the spectrum almost, and how that kind of process evolves. And we see Pharrell in videos of him in the studio where they can bang out a couple of tracks a day almost. But this one where it kind of fades to black and it comes back and it's like day 49, it's been a long journey with and I can imagine it's that much more difficult when you got Diddy shouting in your left ear for 49 days in a row.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, and maybe that might have been the downfall of the track, is Diddy is also known to be a perfectionist, and sometimes it takes away the essence of the whole point of capturing that moment. You're meant to create a vibe in the studio, and that's what you're trying to capture. So if the vibe isn't there, sometimes it plays out as well, So I do think that when you put it that way, if the track took them 50 days plus to make, more than likely it probably lost the essence of what it was meant to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think that essence is probably there. I think it's just as you say, Diddy is one of those producers, as many of them are, who's known as a perfectionist and kind of constantly wants it tweaked and changed and updated, and it's kind of almost a forever process. Same stories you hear with Dr. Dre in the studio, which is why we can never get an album out with him almost. It's I've heard stories with The Game and Snoop and people like that saying how there'll be a one-word ad-lib that he will make you do 50 times.
Yeah.
And even then, it's still not good enough. And I can imagine Diddy is kind of quite like that as well. Maybe not quite so much with the vocals, but musically and in terms of the beat and everything, I can very much imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, when it comes to Neptune's production, like, you would think that with certain people he would be a lot easier, but some people it's also just a control thing. So I don't know, because Pharrell had, before that point, already had such a track record, like the whole of the 90s, pretty much he dominated, like going into the 2000s. And Diddy kind of was there beginning of the 90s. So like, if you were to ask me, I don't know. It's one of those things where you, as they say, it's all energy. So you could put two creatives in a room, but if the energy doesn't match. And even in the video, funny enough, you mentioned that when you watch the video back, Pharrell doesn't look like he's vibing with Diddy.
There are points where they're kind of, so to go to the video, it's a lot of it is kind of shot in what looks like an underground kind of club, very small, confined, sweaty kind of area, and they're both kind of obviously on a stage, and they don't look like as if they dislike each other, but they're kind of almost doing their own thing. And I think you see Diddy put his arm around him or get a bit overexcited a few times and grab hold of him and stuff like that, but it doesn't look as if it's necessarily being reciprocated the other way.
No, not at all. I wanted to put because it's funny that you talk about the back end of it, because when you watch in the video, that was actually one of the points I wanted to bring up. I was like, it just doesn't look like Pharrell's in the video with Diddy. He's kind of just doing his thing. He's kind of just performing. If anything, if I was Hype Williams, I would have filmed Pharrell performing and put Pharrell on the projector, because yeah, it just would have probably created more of a balance. Um, there was a few shots in this video where I was like, oh, that's so Hype Williams, like with the colors.
Yeah.
The whole black and white scope, I was like, maybe they overplayed it a few times in terms of the video because it does get a bit boring, you know. But yeah, as you say, it is classic Hype Williams in the style, but I felt like, yeah, it could have done with more color.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those areas in one of these years where Hype, trying to get away from his stereotypical Hype Williams type videos and trying to do things a little bit differently. And, because he's known for his, big kind of bold videos and lots of color, lots of expression and stuff like that. And we see splashes of that in here. The colourful parts are extremely colourful. But as you say, there's a lot of kind of monochrome, black and white shot. A lot of it's because it's in that kind of underground club type sort of scene. A lot of it is kind of just very dark, and which is obviously what they're trying to get over because of the setting. But I get what you mean there as well. But to your point a moment ago, where you said you thought maybe they should have just shot Pharrell independently, projected that or something. What I noticed when I saw a video of the Bad Boy reunion tour that they did a few years back, whenever it was, and I think there was a documentary about it as well. And funnily enough, when Diddy performs that song, that is exactly what they do. So obviously Hype has got an individual just shot from the chest up of Pharrell, just stood on the spot looking at the camera, rhyming his words, moving about a little bit. And that is literally what they put on the screen behind Diddy at the concert. While Diddy's obviously running around and, with his dancers and whatnot. So he did actually do that as well.
Yeah,
You should be a video director.
Thank you.
You got the ideas already, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation because I actually do video direction. I've directed quite a few.
Oh, well, there you go then, see?
But yeah, I mean, I looked at that video, and as I say, I like what they were trying to do, but I do feel like even with the dances, they didn't showcase the dance element as well as they could have. They had a few silhouettes every now and then of a dancer kind of trying to do some sort of like a tut or something, and that was it. It was then cuts back to like them performing this song, but as I say, the energy between the two wasn't gelling, so it never really sold the video. And I can understand why the video hasn't done what the other videos have done. Like when you said Marilyn Monroe, I was still like, yeah, it's underrated, but it's still kind of done the numbers. Whereas you look at this one and it's like, I still feel like the track is a solid track, but yeah, the visuals, I feel probably in Hype Williams' case, I would say this was a miss for him.
This is one of those tracks where I think if you played this to some people, even kind of Pharrell fans, or you mention it, they're like, what track? With Diddy? A lot of people aren't even necessarily aware of this track. That's how kind of, under the radar it went. And even nowadays, I don't hear it get an awful lot of play anywhere. Again, not that I'm out hanging around in bars and clubs and stuff these days, but, there are some, Neptune's tracks or just kind of hip-hop tracks in general that have that vibe where even years later you still hear them, whether it's on the radio or as a backing track on a TV show or whatever it may be. Whereas this one, at least to me, it doesn't crop up that often, if at all, let's say, which is a shame.
It is. I mean, it's something you could listen to at home, as we said, but yeah, I don't see it getting played in clubs. I mean, even in terms of, I do think that it has the potential to creep up again, especially during this TikTok phase. Like it has the potential to creep up again, but I don't know. It would depend on the management and the people around Diddy,
It's a good shout because I think if you go to YouTube and you actually search for this track, the vast majorities of the videos that are listed are people doing their own dances to the track. You know, there's the official video, there's the behind the scenes thing, there's the BET Awards that you mentioned with
Chris Brown.
Chris Brown prattling around. People know I'm not a Chris Brown fan. And then, every other video is pretty much, fan-made videos doing their own kind of dance moves and stuff like that. So, there's definitely that possibility. Maybe you want to start the trend.
No, I'm not a dancer anymore. Just give me a second, Steven. Laptop was going to die.
All right, no worries. There's always at least one technical issue during these recordings. And I can edit that out anyway. I probably won't, but I could.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the trend. The trend, I think it definitely could happen. I wouldn't put it past, it popping off anytime soon. I think that like the Les Twins have done something and they already like dance for Beyonce and stuff. And this was before
I saw one of their videos actually, yeah.
This was before they were dancing for Beyonce. So if you ask me, it literally is a phone call away. If Diddy were to pick up his phone today and say, yo, I want to do a TikTok challenge for this track, it could those numbers that we're looking at could hit 100 mil in the next 2 months. I know that for a fact, regardless of the video being what it is. They could actually reshoot a new video with a bunch of dancers, and I wouldn't get hyped to direct it. I would definitely look for someone else. And I'm not saying that because hype has messed up the first one. I just think that at the same time, if somebody couldn't capture the essence of what it holds the first time round, like I would give it to someone else,
Yeah, for sure. Have a kind of fresh take on it almost.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, mate, it only needs one person to get on TikTok and set that trend off, and I'll leave that with you. All right, what else have we got about this track? That's most of my notes, to be honest. One other note I had was credited as being written by Diddy, Pharrell, and I think is it Gizzle? You pronounce it?
Yeah.
Who is a writer signed to Bad Boy. I don't know a huge amount about her. Aside from the fact she's been involved in some pretty big tracks, including this. And again, in the behind the scenes video, you see part of her process with, I think she's with Pharrell doing it, kind of bouncing sounds and lines and words kind of off of each other a little bit. So that's kind of quite cool to see that kind of insight, because I think if you again going back to these kind of behind the scenes videos you see with Pharrell, especially the really big ones like Midnight Hour and stuff like that, and you see how he's not sat there with a pad of paper and a pen writing lyrics. You have the melody and he kind of just comes up with
words around it
on the spot, essentially. Messes around with the words kind of there and then, and we see that in the behind the scenes video here as well. Even when he's in the booth recording, he's still doing the same thing on this track. So that's kind of really interesting to see, and I'll put a link in the show notes to all the videos and things we've mentioned, so people can go and watch them. Any other thoughts from yourself on this track, this video?
I think like in terms of, as I say, the notes is the sampling that I looked at. The reason why I went back to, thank you for looking at, like actually bringing out the words, because it was like I totally forgotten. But Public Enemy. I was like, what's the track called again? But is because it is one of the biggest hip hop tracks ever, because that was just before sampling became an issue. That's something that people don't realize, is Public Enemy got away with that track having so many samples. And then the following year, if I can check, let me just check my notes, because I actually put this down because I was like, so a ruling on sampling didn't come down until 1991, when Gilbert O'Sullivan won a case against Biz Markie for sampling Sullivan's Alone Again on Mackie's Alone Again, basically. So that was 91. So this track that inspired this track to happen comes from a phrase where sampling was still kind of like it was, you didn't need to get no clearance, and then
Yeah.
the following year you had to clear things, and it became so expensive and so tricky that it changed the whole course of hip hop. So just to keep that in mind, that without this track, the Public Enemy track, we would not have this Finna Get Loose track. And I love that they were trying their best, as you say, to not only pay tribute to, but also kind of like, yeah, cool. Like, this is what time it is, you know, it's hip hop, it's the culture. And that's what the dancing is all about, you know, like, as I say, the theme of it, you know, the underground vibe, them performing in a dungeon space kind of thing. That's the culture, you know, so it was a great concept. I just feel execution was a little bit short. That's all.
You may know, or someone else out there who's way smarter than me will probably know. But after that ruling in the early 90s,
Yeah.
do you then have to go back and kind of retroactively get clearance for tracks that you sampled? Because obviously normally on this track, you'd look at the credits and obviously you'd have Public Enemy listed as kind of writers, but you then have the people before them who the sample was originally taken from also listed as writers or credited in some way. Obviously they're not on this track, or not from what I could see anyway. So I'm just wondering about, kind of retroactively clearing samples that hadn't previously been cleared.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the sampling, like Diddy, I think Diddy's known for sampling first and foremost. Like the biggest track where he made a loss, but it really kept his career going and pushed him in the direction that he's in now is that Every Step I Take Sting track. Is he never got clearance for that. So even if they don't list it, Sting gets paid that royalty check. So Diddy's not making any money off those tracks a lot of the time. And I think it's just deciding whether or not like you want to make money from it. So like whether you clear it or not, Cisco also went through a phase where he ended up having to pay I forgot the writer's name, but that Living La Vida Loca, when he said that,
Ricky Martin did it originally. It was written with someone else.
Yeah,
and he
but
knew
the writer,
person that co-wrote it originally, which is why he didn't get clearance. I saw the same interview, I think. He said, "Oh no, I'm cool with them. I don't need to get clearance yet. I'll do it later."
And that messed.
They screwed him over.
That screwed the whole team over. Not just him. That screwed everyone over because their royalty checks, their publishing checks went from looking crazy cool to like oh what, really, we're not getting paid anymore, you know. And that's what I mean is it's like if someone samples my stuff, they don't have to credit me. Just know I'm taking money. Like that's all I'm doing. Is you're not getting paid for it. Your name can be everywhere because I'm gonna get paid. I'm fine with that.
And a slight, I would say that kind of slightly ties into this very last point that I've note that I took, where we're talking about sampling and retroactively after things like that. Ties into Marvin Gaye. I'll ask you, I'll see if you know, because this is quite a sort of vague and random fact, how Marvin Gaye ties into this track. Obviously, we know Marvin Gaye because obviously Blurred Lines and all that jazz, which we won't get into now because that's a whole other podcast. But yeah, there is a very loose connection to Marvin Gaye here. Any idea what it might be?
I can't pick the sample, to be honest with you. I heard James Brown in the execution to it, but like even
I'll give you a clue. It's not in the music.
Really? Oh, the performance.
I'll just tell you. No, I'll just tell you. We'll be here all night otherwise. No, this is a very loose connection, I have to say.
Get loose.
No pun intended. The cover. If you look at the cover of the single, it's a stylized extract from an Ernie Barnes painting from 1971 of some people dancing in like an underground club. And the same painting was used for Marvin Gaye's album I Want You.
Oh, wow.
There's an uninteresting fact that nobody wanted.
Wow, that's cool. That's really cool.
But yeah,
Really
there
cool.
you go. And I saw, because I was researching this, and it said something along the lines of, in the thing that I read, it said, oh, yeah, this image was also used for Marvin Gaye's cover album. So it's very strange that they use this, seeing as Pharrell's recent issues with the Marvin Gaye family.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think Pharrell has anything to do with the cover of the CD single. So especially when it's not his track, he just features on it. So I was going to mark a little citation there and see if that could be changed in some way. I can't remember if that was on Genius or Wikipedia or somewhere I saw that comment. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's that track. I think we both kind of agree there. Not the best in the world, but slightly underrated and definitely room for improvement. Let's say.
Definitely.
Let's get on to some news from the last few months. I've only got a few stories here because obviously there is far too much news that I've missed. So we'll just pick some of the main ones. So speaking of Blurred Lines and Robin Thicke has a new album out with, I think, a couple of tracks produced by Pharrell. I think one had a video come out. Is it Take Me Higher, I think the track was. It was like a lyric video that came out. I can't say I'm a big Robin Thicke fan. I tend to not avoid most of his stuff, but I don't go seeking it out these days. Yeah. And just before we recorded, I thought I'd better go and look at what the last single was. And I can't remember if it was one of the Pharrell ones off the album, but I started listening to it and I thought, this sounds like elevator music.
Yeah.
or it sounded like the sort of slightly bland record you'd expect to hear, like in the background of a hotel bar
party.
or something.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. I get like a cocktail party kind of. Yeah, I get no. I get that vibe. I think Robin Thicke messed up with his wife because she was the one who was writing a lot of the stuff that we were hearing, like co-writing. It's not that I don't think he's talented. I think he's definitely out there in terms of like when he puts a record together, he has the ability to move you. But I do think this industry is full of that, like where you forget the people that have built you up and you think, oh, well, I'm here now, so I can do anything I want to do and get away with it. But yeah, I don't know. Like I used to be a Robin Thicke fan, like his old early stuff,
Yeah.
Brand New Jones. Funny enough, we talking about him because I was like looking into it and I was like, yeah, like Blurred Lines was probably the last track that I properly listened to by Robin Thicke.
Yeah, same here. And again, some of his early stuff's really good. And obviously, Wanna Love You Girl with
Pharrell.
Oh,
yeah.
Is obviously a classic track. And another Hype Williams video, funnily enough. But yeah, his stuff nowadays, or for the last kind of quite a few years, very hit and miss. It's either pretty good, quite catchy, like Blurred Lines, for example, or to me, it's just saccharine kind of ballads and just this kind of background music almost. Nothing to it. So anyway, if you're a fan of Robin Thicke, you can go check out the album. I probably won't be. Next on the list, I think we talked about this on the last episode. It was just happening, but now it has happened. Pharrell has opened a hotel with David Grootman down in Miami Beach, the Good Time Hotel. I think we saw shots of it back in December or January, some kind of concepts and some of the artwork and what parts of it were going to look like. It is now open. You can now book a room there if you want to spend $300 a night or whatever the basic rooms are. But it does look very nice. Have you had a look at this at all? Have you seen any pictures?
Oh, yeah. I mean, funny enough, when you were like, oh, we're going to talk about Pharrell, because the news came out 2 days ago.
Yep.
And I'd asked you like, oh, yo, can I get on the podcast like a week ago nearly? So it was like 2 days ago. I was like, oh, okay, cool. They're opening up the hotel. Yeah, but I mean, if you can get to Miami because of the times we're in.
Exactly. It's a strange time to open a hotel in a holiday hotspot like that. But I guess there are I guess if you live in the US, you can still kind of travel
Travel.
somewhat. So
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, I want to go out there like this year, but who knows? Who knows?
yeah, I've never been to Miami. Miami is definitely on my list. And if I were to go out there, aside from it being Pharrell related, it does look like a very nice hotel in a very nice location.
Yeah.
It's not extortionately priced. I did look earlier, if you book for like one night, there are good discounts. I think at the moment, if you book for, I think I looked at like, a long weekend there or something, if you were, flying in or out of Miami, for example, I think you get like a fairly decent room. I think I looked for like 4 nights or something. It was like $1,000 or something. So it's not too badly priced.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your budget is. Like, but if
Well,
you're going
yeah,
to Miami as well, yeah, you probably have the money to do so. I would say like even if you're gonna go and check it out like for a day, if you can't afford to stay in it, but I would try and go and check out the hotel.
it looks like the
It
sort of
looks
place that would be
nice.
nice just to hang out in. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So yeah, if you're traveling, you're balling on a budget, then at least swing by, hang out at the bar, have a drink,
Drink.
um, have a drink. Yeah, then you can also obviously Pharrell has what's it called now? Swan Miami, the restaurant as well. He has that. You can go there again. If it's a bit out of your price range, you can always go and get one of his Purple Rain. Then obviously now calling it cocktails that Noriega is now I think addicted to. So you can swing by there. So yeah, if you're in Miami, you might bump into Pharrell, seeing as he seems to be out there permanently now. And you can also dine in his establishment and sleep in his establishment as well.
Winning.
Yeah, for sure. What else have we got? There have been various Adidas releases over the last
Yeah.
kind of few months. We've seen
Like
there's the Prime Knit Fine collection. There's been the Black on Black or All Black edition. There were two editions of that. There was an extra edition that came out. We also saw the Hue NMD Cream release, which for some reason, I have no idea why, they did it with that Boston Dynamics robot dog thing at Pharrell's house in Miami. It was funny and it was interesting. Fam was there, Pusha was there.
yeah.
They had obviously other versions of the dog delivering them to other people in different places as well. I have no idea what the tie-in is there, what the link is. It was slightly bizarre to watch, but
I did like Pharrell's always it's kind of like that that nerd thing that we talk about like tech stuff and it's things like Will.i.am would do something like that as well, and that's what I picked up on. I was like, oh, it's just you kind of like solidifying that like you about that life, that type of thing. So I was like, yeah, it's pretty. You're right. It's awkward. It's odd, but I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Like,
but it is interesting, yeah. And he's also, I know, I didn't have it in the notes here, but there was a story, I think in January, he's partnered with Google to do some more work with them in terms of, I think it ties in with, what's it called, the recent entrepreneurship thing that he was doing, Black Ambition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it ties in with that, the work he's doing with Google. But yeah, it is that whole kind of, tech sphere that he's in. And I know I'm calling that robot dog, the Boston Dynamics robot dog. I don't think Boston Dynamics own it anymore. Google bought Boston Dynamics and Google sold Boston Dynamics. Then another company bought the rights to the IP, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure who owns it now.
Yeah.
But I do know that they have been doing a lot of kind of publicity stuff over the last kind of 6 to 12 months with other YouTubers and artists and things like that. So I imagine when someone approaches Pharrell's team and says, "Hey, we've got one of those really weird, funky Boston Dynamic robot dog things," he's like,
Yeah.
I'll own that. Stick a shoebox on top of it. Off we go. That's one way to release a shoe. So yes, anyway, back to the point. Yes, lots of Adidas releases, various Hue releases, none that I can think of that I've copped recently. I probably have, and I just can't think of them. But no sneakers, at least recently. Are you a fan of the kind of the hues and the work he's doing with Adidas and stuff like that?
Well, in terms of Adidas, like it inspired me. So I got my own label that I work on, and when I was looking at what Pharrell was doing, like a lot of my career has been shaped off people like Q-Tip, people like Pharrell, people like will.i.am. Like I look at what they do and I kind of go, okay, these are people that just expressing themselves in every shape, way, or form. Like they don't restrict themselves. So when I started to see the Adidas thing start to take off was when I started to see the football jerseys. I was like, this is it. Like they've managed to add cool, an element of like cool to football jerseys that wasn't there before. Before it was quite like, these are our colors. Yeah, that's it. And that's when it clicked. It was like, yeah. And then I looked into it, and when I found like, oh, Pharrell's behind a whole new selection, I was like, man, this guy just constantly outdoes himself, like creatively. You know, he's basically walked into the same domain as Virgil Abloh without even trying. And yeah, I think the Adidas stuff is like wicked. I think it's cool.
Yeah, and the football shirts, I think we talked about it on the last podcast. They'd come out at some point just before that, and we were talking about which ones we like, which ones we don't. But to your point there, the football shirts is really interesting because it's not just him going to Adidas saying, I want to work on this kind of capsule, or even the other way around. Football shirts, only up until very recently do people get to work on football shirts in terms of collaborations.
Yeah.
Because especially with the Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, etc., which most of these shirts relate to, Man United, Juventus, etc. That is part of like the club's identity and the value in those shirts and what they kind of represent and the amount of sales they get from them every year. Normally, a football club will say, no, you cannot touch our shirts.
Yeah.
We can do some other collaboration with some other merchandise, but the shirts we don't touch them.
Yeah.
We don't want it touched. Our sponsors don't want it touched. Adidas don't want it touched, or whoever makes the shirts at that time for that team.
Yeah.
So to actually get access to
To
some
that?
of Europe's biggest clubs,
Yeah.
so like I said, it was Arsenal and Juventus and stuff like that,
United.
Man United.
Yeah.
They're big clubs, and obviously they're not wearing them on the pitch or anything, but the fact they're letting somebody play around with their kits and have their names on them as well and be associated with them just shows how much faith and credibility Pharrell brings to the work that he's doing at Adidas.
Yeah.
Whether you like the designs or not, or the shoes or whatever or not, it just shows kind of that kind of leverage he has there and that kind of respect that not only Adidas have for him by giving him essentially their biggest contract, but also their partners and people they work with as well.
Yeah. True.
Right, what else have we got? Pharrell has made quite a few appearances this year actually on various different bits and pieces. A couple that I picked out, he was on Finding Your Roots over in the US. I think it's on CBS or something in the US.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I've seen reviews of it. People saying it's actually quite interesting and insightful episode of. We have that in the UK and in other places. It's not called Finding Your Roots. It's called something else, though, isn't it? Did you watch it in the UK?
Is this the one? There was one to do with the singing with his uncle.
No, so this is one where they kind of trace back like the family history.
No.
To see where your family originally came from and who was in the family and stuff like that.
Called?
I think every country has its own version
Of
basically.
it, yeah.
In the US, it's Finding Your Roots. Still on my list to check out. I haven't done so yet, but I've heard good things about it. Also, he appeared on Naomi Campbell's podcast. Everyone's got a fucking podcast now.
He's got a
Even
podcast.
Naomi Campbell. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Other Tone is,
Other
yes.
Tone,
is
yeah.
I have to say, I had a podcast before he had a podcast, and I also talked to him about podcasts before he had a podcast. Just saying. But anyway, yes, he appeared on Naomi Campbell's podcast. I can't remember what the podcast is called. Again, I haven't listened to it properly. I've seen little clips here and there. One little insight that I quite liked, I saw it was a clip shared on Facebook or somewhere or other, was his idea for Hollaback Girl, which he did with Gwen Stefani. There was the track with Fabulous back in the day, which was called, my mind has gone blank. Anyway, the hook was, he's on the train, isn't he, on the metro, and it's like, Hollaback young and whoop whoop. It's a terrible version of the hook there, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. And then I think, from what I remember of the story, he was with Naomi Campbell at some point. She was on the phone to somebody. She had obviously been hearing that track, and she had said to somebody, "I'm not no Hollaback girl," referencing the track that he'd had with Fabulous, and that kind of what Hollaback girl means. And he took that, and then obviously took that to Gwen Stefani and made the track Hollaback Girl. That was my very long roundabout way of just, telling a very short anecdote. But there you go. So that is also on my list to listen to at some point soon. I'll get around to that at some point. What else have we got? Let's get on to some releases from BBC that we've had recently. There are way too many to mention, but a few I'm going to pick out. There's a new Beeline and Timberland hiking pack. Now, this should be, in theory, the sort of thing that I would be all over. Living in a country where it snows for 6 months of the year, where in the summer it's a very outdoorsy lifestyle. You would think I'd be into this kind of thing.
But
and I probably should be, but they are not for me. I understand, modern fashion, changes, and people get older, and it's aimed at a certain market and all that. I really don't like these shoes. I think, they look like hiking shoes, and it's just not a look that I like. Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. I would like to have thought they are hiking shoes, but they would, modernize them a little bit, let's say. But they've stuck to the traditional hiking routes, and they've just put a Beeline tag on the side and made them a bit colourful.
Yeah, Gore-Tex.
Yeah. So they're not for me. They're the sort of thing I'd really be in the market for if they just looked a little bit less old manish. And I know I am an old man saying that. But yeah, not for me. I know they sold out like immediately. There were 2 or 3 of the sneakers / boots. There were a few T-shirts and I think hoodies as well that went with them. I think everything's sold out.
Yeah.
So if you're into that kind of thing, then cool. I'm sure it looks great on you. But yeah, not for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I might get myself a pair when they redo just for walking.
I did. I re-looked at them again today because I thought I want to mention them. And there's a boot that's kind of above the ankle, like a normal kind of Timberland.
Yeah, the Gore-Tex,
which I'm really not a fan of. But the low one that looks a little bit more like a normal kind of sneaker.
Trails, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe I could get away with that, but I don't know. If they do a re-release, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I say this, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a foot of snow outside. It's minus 15 degrees out there, and I'm still walking around in a pair of Air Max 90 every day. So, I've got 3 pairs of Timberlands brand new in the cupboard out here that I've never worn. So, Anyway, BBC EU releases. EU going crazy again. Lots of really great releases recently. Today, as we record this, so it's Tuesday the 9th of March, a new space camo umbrella today in collaboration with, I can't think of the brand, but they make kind of bespoke and very nice umbrellas. Umbrellas not normally a thing I would care about, but this umbrella looks really nice. Dark green on the outside with the Space Beach camo on the underside.
Yeah.
Looks beautiful. It is, I think 300 and something euros. So I was like, maybe not.
It's a bit steep, again, but it's stylish.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have to remember, I think I've mentioned this quite a few times on here, is BBC EU is now, the luxury arm of the brand. So everything's going to be expensive that comes from them, unfortunately. I have to say, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last podcast. They released an umbrella towards the end of last year, at the start of this year, which was all black, which had like a moon print underneath on the underside. I actually did buy that one. That was a slightly more affordable, I want to say 80 euros or something. Again, I unwrapped it. It went into the BBC closet, into the freezer. It's never come out since, like everything else. This one, I remember a few years back they did a really nice one as well, BBC EU, which had the Starfield pattern underneath it, which, if anyone knows me, knows I'm a sucker for anything with the Starfield pattern on. I didn't get one at the time, so if anyone ever sees one of those come up for sale anywhere, please let me know, because I probably will pay a stupid amount for one. But anyway, if you're a fan of the Space Beach camo, if you need an umbrella, you don't want to get wet, get over to the website now. Also recently, various rugs and mats. This is an area that BBC have seemed to have gone into. I think because a lot of people were making them, I was going to say bootleg versions, not bootleg versions, custom designs, and being an entrepreneur and selling trademark. Spotting a gap in the market, let's say, and selling trademarked brand logos,
merchandise.
which I don't think BBC were particularly happy about, but they realised the popularity of them. They're now making lots of rugs and mats themselves, but they are very, very nice. So again, BBC EU has a few of their own ones they're doing. The US store has recently released a few different ones as well. They look really great. Again, I wish at the moment I was in a position to just go and buy a load of them. They range, I think in the US, obviously things are a little bit cheaper out there. They're not the luxury arm of the brand. So I think they were ranging from like $100 to $200 or something. Whereas over here in the EU, I think they were like, most of them $250 to $350 or something like that. So a bit more pricey. But, if you want something like that to make your house or your apartment look really good, then there's plenty out there still. Some still available. I think some were re-upped recently as well. So you can get onto the website and find those. We've got plenty of new 2021 season stuff as well, including the re-release of some classic varsity jackets. So the very early BBC red and white varsity, and then there's also the green and yellow or gold version as well. Again, this is coming from BBC EU, so those varsity jackets were pricey in the first place many years ago. They're even pricier now when they're being re-released. I can't remember the retail off the top of my head, but I think it's like $500-600, something like that. But they do look gorgeous. I think there are still a few available. So if you want anything like that, go and get them. We've also seen the re-release, I kind of want to say, of the Space Cowboy on BBC EU. Now, the Space Cowboy was originally part of the Las Vegas Strip series in, I have some of these bits, I want to say 2005, maybe 2006, I think it came out originally. So this was certain items that had an image of the Las Vegas Strip, kind of all the neon signs, and it had the kind of cowgirl as well, and the waitress, and also this, they're now calling me a Space Cowboy. So obviously now reusing some of these elements from 15 odd years ago or so. But really nice design, looks cool, some items available. And also, I've noticed recently with the EU and the US, and also Japan as well, accessory crazy. Obviously the focus for a lot of the time has obviously been on clothing, the sneakers, etc. Now we're seeing just accessories from everyone. Yeah. As we already mentioned, the umbrella, rugs, mats, and stuff like that. Cushions. Everyone has got cushions. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I want to buy every one of them. I think the US just released the astronaut head recently, 4 different colours. There's a full astronaut. There's the cone man. There's the BBC EU astronaut head as well, the version over here that you can get. So there are loads of kind of cushions, loads of accessories at the moment. Again, EU did, they've done travel mugs recently, keychains, lanyards,
sculptures,
and then we've also, we've got the various sculptures and stuff. I didn't have this in the notes, but obviously the recent Astro Boy collaboration they did, which looked amazing. Shout out to Mimi, who was part of that project. That looked really, really good. Obviously, all the masks and stuff as well now. I know we don't really have any over in the EU, but in the US, there are probably 15, 20 different variants of the different masks you can order. So yes, things are still,
Every
coming on nicely at BBC. They're still putting out loads of great stuff. Also, a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily quite
That's
so
so great.
great. But
Yeah, but no, a lot of it is. I mean, it's always been a brand like from its creation, from its like just from its concept that's always been bright. It's kind of like that thing we were talking about with Hype Williams. It's like it is different, and it is for an audience that really and truly isn't trying to fit in. So even stuff that might feel a bit awkward for me to wear, I know that there's definitely someone out there that finds it dope. So just check out.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of stuff I look at it and I think I could not rock that in a million years. But then it sells out, and I know there are people out there buying it, definitely.
So yeah, it's one of those things.
And then to be fair, it's not aimed at my old ass as well. So it was aimed at me when it first came out in the early 2000s. Not really anymore though.
I mean, I don't know. You like they look at the people with the money. You got money, you'll buy a rug. Yeah.
Problem is they know me well, and they know that I will. I sit here surrounded by all my BBC stuff with a dedicated closet to it. Yes, like the idiot I am. Yes. Anyway, I think that was all the news I had, all the notes I had. Let's get into you. Let's chat about you and what you're up to. So obviously, when you reached out, I had a look at what you're working on at the moment and stuff like that, and because we didn't really know each other before that. And I was going through Apple Music this week and YouTube and checking out some of your stuff. And obviously, you mentioned to me that you've got a lot of your work, your music is kind of Pharrell or Neptune's kind of inspired. So like I said to you earlier, there was some great stuff I came across. Obviously, I've not had a chance to listen to everything you've put out. But yeah, I've kind of flicked through some really good stuff. I said to you as well, some really good artwork and visuals as well. You've got a YouTube full of everything and anything, including how to cook chicken, which I sat there and watched.
Hopefully you learned something.
I miss Nando's with all my heart. So when you said chicken and you said Portuguese in one sentence, I was like, I'm going to sit here and watch this, yeah. I'm just going to sit here and dream about Nando's. And at the end, you had it on the barbecue and you're grilling it. I was just like, oh man. Killing me. So yeah, anyway, I'm digressing. Let's get on to you, yes. So tell me like how you got into music, kind of when it started and kind of what you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so I got into music because of my dad. My dad was playing guitar on his bed, and I must have been about 5 or 6. And I walked into the room, and he was singing a bunch of these covers like Bob Marley, Marvin Gaye, and I was like, oh. And I started to listen to him, and I started to sing along, and that's kind of how I started singing. But what made me want to write was I remember watching MTV, and all of these songs started to come up when I must have been about 13, 14. I'd already put down a few poems here and there and stuff, but this hip hop culture that was animated, I remember seeing a lot of like beautiful, Snoop Dogg, Pharrell. I remember watching that back and going, ooh, who's this guy singing up there? Like, all the other acts that you watch all had these like really calm tones, like really like male vocal. And then you had this beautiful, I just want you to know. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this guy, this is I'm like taken by. And then it was just simple. Like he had a white tee on in one of the videos with the Billionaire Boys Club then, and a chain on that wasn't as extravagant as they are now, but it had like the links chain with the different colors, and I was like, oh man, like okay, cool. And I started to follow Pharrell, and then that Gwen Stefani episode we talking about, I felt like, oh, he had decided to go in this commercial kind of like direction that was different from what he had started with. He was creating stuff that people were drawn to. He wasn't trying to fit in. He is just making what he's making. I felt there was that point where he was trying now to. Do you remember? Can I have it like that? You got it like that. Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, that phase. I was like, that doesn't feel like Pharrell. It felt very different to the energy I was feeling before. And then he kind of went silent on the music element in terms of his own production and putting himself out there. And then out of nowhere, we just had another episode where just all these other tunes started to pop up, the Marilyn Monroes, the Happies, the just all of these great tunes. And I was like, wow. And that's why I said, like, he's inspired me, because even if you look at the artwork, all the colors, and, I still want to change that into a clothing line at some point, incorporate that type of print on everything. I've got this is the logo for my brand. I spent so much time just trying to understand where this creativity comes from and how to capitalize on it. So even now, I'm releasing a track a week for this year. I'm trying to do it for the whole year. And the whole point of that is just to push myself and venture and learn where I'm comfortable, and also showcase that I can actually like put out content that is good, and it's quality and quantity. So I mean, as I said, I'm inspired by people like Pharrell, Quincy Jones, Jay-Z. It's like the culture. But this from the singing elements, I'd never heard anyone do that in the hip hop element, like so clean. And that was now going back to like 2000, probably 99, 2000, 2001, where I was just like, okay, what is this? All the hard hitting kind of sampling, the 808s, that boom, doom, doom, like I started to go nuts. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was like, what is this music? Like, I want to make this. And there was no computers at the time to go and produce. Like, there was no Fruity Loops. But I was like, what is this? So yeah.
So are you producing your own stuff as well?
I'm producing some of it. I'm not even gonna lie. Like right now, I would love to be producing a lot of the stuff, but with the quantity and me searching to find the sound that I want to find for the next album, I'm kind of just collaborating with as many people as possible. I might produce one or two tracks, maybe. So I'll produce, I think, out of the 50 something tracks this year, I might produce 10. But the rest I'm outsourcing as well, and working with different individuals, different producers, to also see what sounds I could expose myself to.
Well, there's certainly a lot of our listeners and people that I know from the our kind of Pharrell, N.E.R.D, Neptune's fan community who are producers as well. So if anyone wants to reach out, then do feel free to get in touch with me, and I can pass details along as well and try and make something happen. So as you say, you're trying to put out a track a week for this year.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of, are there other projects you're working on? You mentioned the album as well. Is that working alongside that as well?
So the album, basically, I've called these my prolific years. So the first album I kind of put out, my debut album, was in 2019, and it was called Prominent. And from there, I went on and put out, in 2020, I put out 2 EPs towards the end of the year. One was called Learning Life, and the other was called Sweet Boy. And what had happened is I just have a bunch of music. I've been writing for so long, and I was just like, I need to put all of this down. A lot of people have a bunch of good songs in their heads, or kind of just on their guitar, and they'll play it once in a while. And I was like, no, I need to actually put these down, make them solid, and put them out there. And that's what this is. So even in terms of the album, I know what sounds I want to have on the album. I already know I want to go more live instrumentation. So this, like, next few months or so, I'm just experimenting. I'm enjoying music. Like, I'm building up to that thing that I want to create, and I'm finding the best way I can create it. Even in terms of playing, I've never ever learned any instruments. I play a bit of guitar. I do my scales on the piano, but in terms of production, whenever I've produced, I've brought in instrumentalists and played them the chord progression and then kind of directed them and been like, okay, I want you to play it this way. So this whole new thing of playing everything in yourself and programming things is new to me. So I needed a phase where I could challenge myself to come up with new sounds and new way of production. But for the next album, I want to go more live. I want drums. I want actual drums. I might program some 808s over the recordings, but I want it to feel like I'm taking people back in time to a point where there was live music again. So yeah, I'm working on everything.
Sounds like it. Before all this, did you get a chance to do much live stuff with the first album you put out in the EPs?
The first album we released end of 2019. As we all know, 2020 it got rusty really quickly. So I actually haven't even toured that album. It's done, I think, about 200,000 streams, which is not amazing, but it's still quite like, okay, cool. 200,000 people kind of listen to this, which is a good feeling.
Nothing to be stiffed at for sure.
But I still am planning a full-on show. I want to do a prolific show and tour that. But as they say, you don't make much from shows, so you need to be making money elsewhere, in order for you to tour. Your returns on a sold-out international tour is like it's like you're lucky to make 20% profit, and that's on a sold out tour. So what happens if it's not sold out? You see what I mean? So I'm working the music and hoping that I could do smaller shows and build the right audience to then do one massive international tour, hopefully in the next 5 years or so, where people are coming in for 3 hours to experience nearly a whole catalog and a whole show. It's got theatrical elements and stuff. So I've been working on the show for a few years now. Before that album, I had a few EPs out and a few singles, and I'd done a Southern African tour. That kind of, it was me in my element, making my way through Southern Africa, just trying to showcase what my abilities are and, trying to entertain people. And that went well in terms of we had a sold out show in Namibia and a sold out show in Botswana and a sold out show in Zambia, but Zimbabwe, my hometown, that was like kind of like, okay, cool. I need to look into this. Like people ain't really coming to the shows. Why? And there was so much to the business side of it that made me look at shows and go, okay, I'm going to need to really like look at this from a new perspective and create a whole new show that is very different. There's some kind of like Circus du Soleil or something. You know what I mean? Like it has to be different.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it sounds like you're keeping busy, and obviously there's one of the if we can take pluses from what's happening in the world at the moment is that obviously, when we're trying to work on projects and stuff like that, we now have that little bit more time to, hunker down and focus on it and spend some real time on it, says the man that does one podcast every 2 months at the moment. But it's opening opportunities. And hopefully, like you say, for yourself, giving you that chance to, be a bit more creative, put stuff out regularly, start building that audience. And then hopefully, come the end of this year, once you've got that kind of, catalogue of work behind you, onto even bigger, better things, producing, clothing line, all the merch, everything going.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, it's so hard to talk to people about the ideas, the vision. It's kind of like, and that's why when you said, oh, like this BBC thing, I was like, in Pharrell, I was like, this is right up my alley because I never had a blueprint. Where I'm from, there was very few people that kind of would have aspired to have their own clothing line. In fact, they must have been in the circle. I can't name anybody. Like now it's a common thing, but I was thinking about this when I was at home. I was cutting up stuff and trying to, make my own clothing when I was like 7, 8 years old. And now I find myself in a position where it's like, okay, all engines go. You can do this. but now you kind of go, oh, everyone can. So
Yeah.
how do you basically make yourself look different? What is the difference? You know, and that has been the thing. Is it's like, okay, cool. How am I contributing to the culture? What is it that I want to give to the culture? Like, it's not about me trying to just make money. That's not what it's about. It's about actually genuinely contributing to this new hip hop wave, and people being able to go and say, yo, do you remember this? Yeah, this changed my life. Like, this done this for me. Yo, that track took me to this space. Like, that's what it's about. And right now is a good time for Africa, because a lot of people are looking at Africa and going, what has Africa got to offer? And as a people, because the internet has made the world smaller. Because before, people just come ripped from Africa and then come and showcase it in the Western world, and everyone's like, these
Yeah.
guys are so creative. It's like, like, no, it came from there. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. I just have to keep chugging away, keep, chipping away at small things, and keep being inspired. Keep looking at people that are doing what you want to do, and understand, like, okay, this is where they're coming from, and this is why they're doing it, and you'll get somewhere. I believe that in 10 years' time, the conversation that we'll probably have on this podcast will be talking about a collaboration with Pharrell, and BBC. And I'll be able to break bread and be like, yes, Steven, remember when I told you that this is going to happen? And you'd be like, yeah, 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 yeah. I really like the new sneakers you guys have done. Even if you don't like them, you probably say that anyway. But hey,
Of course, yes. And I'll buy a pair as well.
put them in the closet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the hundreds of others, yes. But yeah, no, I was having a similar conversation with a friend the other day, talking about the podcast and just more kind of YouTube content that I want to do related to the podcast, but not doing it for the sake of doing it. And it's one of those kind of pros and cons that you mentioned. It's the barrier to entry now is so much lower. Anyone can make a YouTube video or record a podcast, even Naomi Campbell. But that means, if you are then going to do something, you've got to differentiate yourself. You've got to do something a little bit different. Obviously, people like Naomi Campbell, for example, obviously already have a huge audience because of what they've done in the past. People like, me and yourself, we have to kind of keep trying things to find those niches to see what works, but also what doesn't work. And look at that. And luckily, I'm kind of, as a day job, I'm an analyst. So I like to look at, numbers. I like to look at why it performed, why it didn't perform, all the kind of varying factors, and kind of disseminate that and look into it a bit more. But you've kind of really got to just keep, pumping stuff out there and looking at it and working out exactly what that niche is. But then once you find it, then you're off. And obviously, like you say, if you're going to keep putting out, tracks throughout the year, and you say you're the album, working on the clothing and all that, one day it'll all kind of it'll click, it'll all come together, and you'll be away for sure.
Man.
And I'll be messaging you on Skype saying, can I get a ticket to the show? I bought the sneakers, I've got the hoodie. Can I just get a ticket to the show, please? 2 tickets to the show.
No
That's all I
problem.
need, 2 tickets.
That's done. That is done.
And you'll be out here in Helsinki, mate, in the middle of January or February, snow up to your knees, doing your world tour.
Performing out there. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you be in front row, man. Listen. I definitely. You've asked for the tickets. The tickets are yours, man. The second it happens, the tickets are yours. There's no even argument there.
I look forward to it. And obviously, even if you weren't to grace our lovely shores of Finland, I'm back in the UK enough. And I'm sure in the coming months and years, you will obviously continue to grow with what you're doing. And our paths will cross, of course, going forward. And I definitely look forward to the day when I can come back home and come to London or wherever in the UK and meet up and come and see a show for sure. Obviously, your show. All right, man, let's wrap it up there because we've just gone over an hour. Perfect sort of timing. Let the people know, where can everyone find you, get in contact with you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. People, make sure you get at me on all the socials. The name is Jerome Arab, Jeromearab. Pretty much on Facebook, it's at the African Arab. On Twitter, it's at the African Arab. On Instagram, it's at the Great Arab. In terms of music, you can get my music on all the major platforms: Deezer, YouTube, Tidal, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere, pretty much. Yeah, and I appreciate feedback, so please drop comments on those YouTube videos. Just let me know what you think. Drop likes, share, and yeah, hopefully I get to perform for you guys one day, soon. And one love.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. And I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can come and follow you and reach out to you. Hopefully, I can send your name to some people and send some names your way as well. Some producers out there I know that are always collabs as well. People in our little space that like our kind of sound.
Yeah.
That would be kind of great to see. But yeah, in the meantime, as I say, everything's down in the show notes, people. You can find me at Steve R. Penny. You can find the podcast at Otherz Podcast. I always forget because I haven't done this in so long. Otherz with a Z. And then you can stream and get all of the show notes and the merch and everything else over at theothers.net or go to othersmerch.com. One or the other. We will wrap it up there for this week, is what I'm trying to say. I say this week, it could be this month, could be this decade, who knows with me. But hopefully I'll be back in a week or two, get this back to a regular kind of schedule. And yeah, we'll leave it there and speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.